Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another episode of Quite Serious Impressions, where I play the first few hours of a game, then decide whether or not it's worth my time. And today we will be talking about Slain: Back from Hell, a game developed by Andrew Gilmore and published by Digerati Distribution. Slain was successfully funded on Kickstarter back in 2015 and was released a year later. It showed a lot of potential with its Castlevania-like gameplay and beautiful art style. However, its initial release was abysmal. Awful controls, horrible sound design, buggy combat, the game was almost unplayable. That of course changed when it was re-released 5 months later under the name Slain: Back from Hell. So how does the re-release compare to the initial one? Were the major complaints addressed? Did the game deliver on its original Kickstarter promise? To answer these questions and more, allow me to summarize my first impressions. Let's start off with the story. You play as a resurrected warrior by the name of Bathorin, a clear reference to Julia Bathory, a famous Hungarian glass designer. A spirit wakes him up from his eternal slumber, telling him that his children need him. He denies having any children and asks to be left alone, but is then forced to take on this quest anyway. Shortly after, you are introduced to Lord Vrall, the game's antagonist. He talks as though he has met Bathorin before, yet Bathorin has no recollection of him. But I guess that won't stop him from picking a fight with Vrall anyway. You then meet this scary-looking hag who acts as your guide throughout the rest of the game, helping you with your quest to defeat Lord Vrall's minions and eventually facing Vrall himself. The story isn't great, but it's generally serviceable. The dialogue is pretty cheesy and many of the characters are extremely cliched. It's clear that the story wasn't the priority while making this game. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that. If you want a story, just go listen to Amon Amarth or something. This game knows what it's good at, and that's the visuals. I mean, look at it! Everything about the visuals is brilliant. The animation is smooth, the backgrounds are breathtaking, the levels are very atmospheric, and this is without a doubt the best headbanging animation I have ever seen. The only thing I didn't like is the way the platforms appear. It just looks so unimaginative. Granted, it was much worse in the original release, where the platforms just appear out of thin air, but adding a puff of smoke seemed like a cheap fix to me. The character and enemy designs are so detailed, and you can see the care that went into animating them. It's small details like how corporeal enemies can trigger death traps, yet incorporeal ones can't, that truly impressed me. Graphics are not usually enough to carry a game, but for Slain I would say the visuals alone are worth the price of admission. And to think all the art and animation was done by just one guy. Andrew Gilmore, you are truly a talented artist. And the music? Absolutely fantastic. It captures the game's atmosphere perfectly. Not surprising seeing how it was composed by the extremely talented Kurt Victor Bryant. If I had one complaint about the music, I'd say it can be a bit repetitive at times. The tracks are pretty short, so hearing them on a loop for long periods of time can get a bit grating. Although that might be because of me dying over and over again. The game is very difficult, and not the good kind of difficult. More on that later. Slain is a 2D action platformer that is heavily influenced by the classic Castlevania games, and for the most part it does its job pretty well. The platforming is well done, the level design is interesting, and some of the boss fights were pretty fun and challenging. The game is very enjoyable and it's filled with great ideas and fun gameplay. But it's flawed, and it's these flaws that are stopping it from being the masterpiece it could have been. For starters, death traps are kind of a pain, especially when you're fighting enemies around them. Granted, they are still fairly visible, and you usually encounter the first of every type of trap right after a checkpoint. The game also has a weird difficulty spike at times. It sometimes throws you into situations where you need to act fast without giving you any indication of what's coming or any easier, similar challenges to prepare you for the more difficult one. For example, there's this part where you go through a portal and this skeleton pushing a giant wall of spikes starts chasing you. To make matters worse, the hallway is filled with death traps and the most annoying enemy type in the game. Why not introduce this challenge in an easier, safer way first? Maybe have the skeleton at the start a bit further back, or at least have one part where the hallway doesn't contain other enemies or traps, then gradually make it harder. As I mentioned before, the level design is really well done, but it isn't without its flaws. For example, some platform challenges weren't well thought out, such as this part where you jump from one crumbling platform to another till you reach safe grounds. I mistakenly jumped back to a previous platform and found out that crumbled platforms don't come back. I had no choice but to kill myself. a legendary warrior on a quest to rid the world of evil. Killed himself because of a lack of platforms. All of those are small complaints though. They might be annoying, but they are definitely not game-breaking. However, one problem I have with this game that keeps it from being brilliant is the combat. You have a basic 3-hit combo, a projectile attack, and a charged up attack. The same goes for all 3 weapons. Some enemies are weaker against one of the weapons over the other 2, which adds a bit of fun figuring out which weapon works better on which enemy. Pulling off the charged attack is tricky, since you can't charge indefinitely as it fizzles out if you take too long. I like this because it stops you from trying to cheese your way out of difficult fights, and it does a lot of damage, which makes it well worth the risk. You can also guard, though it doesn't block 100% of the damage, it only reduces it slightly. If you time your guards well, you get the chance to parry the enemy and deliver a powerful counterattack, which is extremely satisfying to pull off. The most apparent problem with the combat is how your attacks just have no weight to them. Your character swings this giant sword like it's made out of styrofoam, and the impact just feels empty. It feels like hitting cardboard on cardboard. Another problem is that the combat system is not well suited for crowd control, yet there are so many instances where you have to deal with multiple waves of enemies. And for a sword this big, the reach is surprisingly short. It was mostly noticeable when fighting bigger enemies. However, the inclusion of a backstep made this a lot less of a problem than it could have been. The combat isn't horrible, it's just marred with bad design choices which end up making it more annoying than challenging. Overall, I thought the game was fantastic. The beautiful art style, the great music, and the fun gameplay are more than enough for me to recommend it. It is a huge improvement over its initial release, and then some. If you're a fan of the genre or a fan of the classic Castlevania games, you should definitely get this game. Slain Back from Hell is available for $12.99 on Steam, PS Vita, PS4, and I forgot to talk about the collectibles.